Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Mikal Bridges is changing teams, but won't have to change zip codes. Also, the Cavaliers have a new man in charge, but will it be enough to retain Donovan Mitchell? And we look at the NBA draft hopefuls you should know.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The New York Knicks are reassembling a Villanova title team in the Mecca of basketball at Madison Square Garden. 4 unprotected first-round picks to the Nets for Mikal Bridges, plus a 2025 protected Milwaukee first, a 2028 protected pick swap, and a 2025 second rounder. Did I miss anything? Gavin Shaw, Locked On Knicks, joins me now. This was surprising because the draft is tomorrow. We expected wheeling and dealing all over the place, and yet here we go, the Knicks with their big swing.
Yeah, this was the week to make it before they had to re-sign OG Anunoby, before they potentially, we're going to see if they can still do it, had to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein, and the Knicks struck on a guy that Josh Hart. I don't know. Can Josh Hart personally lose a first-round pick? I'm not sure, because he's been openly tampering and lobbying for this for months with SpongeBob memes, with making fun of Mikal on podcast appearances. He deserves just as much credit as Leon Rose for this one, but this is a monumental move for the New York Knicks. I think Mikal Bridges, with the experience he's gained being a number one, gets to retreat to a little bit more of a comfortable role that he played on the Phoenix Suns when they made the NBA Finals as a number 3 or number 4 option. I think still has it in him to be one of the best defenders in basketball. And personally, I may be a little biased, but I think this puts the Knicks in a group of 2 with the Boston Celtics in terms of the top tier of title contenders in the NBA.
Well, of course, I was going to ask you about how you thought that this changed the Knicks standing in the Eastern Conference. Why are you so bullish on them after this move in particular?
So important caveats there. They have to bring back OG Anunoby, which at this point I don't think they make this move unless they are 98% or above certain that Anunoby would be coming back. And reporting
right now, just for clarification, is that from Woj, who broke this story, is that they intend to bring back OG Anunoby. It's Isaiah Hartenstein, who may not be able to come back now, given the outlay of money that they'll have to send to Mikal Bridges. Go ahead.
Right. And that's why it makes sense that you've been hearing the last few days that they're shopping Mitchell Robinson, I think, as a means to try to bring Hartenstein back. That is a big question. Hartenstein is a key piece for them. And in a scenario where they lose him and they keep Mitch, as long as they can keep Mitch healthy, I don't think it changes the overall ceiling of this team. I mean, just about as deadly of a pair of wing defenders as there are in the NBA, in Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Obviously, Kawhi and Paul George and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can have their say in that conversation, but the Knicks are right there, shooting galore, gravity galore around Jalen Brunson. A significant question if they intend to keep Julius Randle, if they want to move him, just because the implications in terms of his eventual extension get a little dicey with just how much money they have committed. So that is something to watch. So there's still a lot of questions, but if they can come in with this team pretty much intact, plus Mikal Bridges, Pete, you and I talked about this. I thought they maybe had a shot at the Celtics even without Bridges this past year. Now I think Boston has to be the favorite. The Knicks are kind of nip and tuck with them though.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why the Knicks could just not sustain their playoff run is they just didn't have the bodies, and they ran out of steam. Guys got hurt, in part because they were wearing down. When you have someone like Mikal Bridges, it becomes a pressure release valve. Like Josh Hart doesn't have to play, 50 of the 48 minutes, which is what it seems like he does every night. Dante DiVincenzo can play a more complementary role. Everyone sort of slides into a role that's more comfortable for them, and maybe they can play 5-8 less minutes a game over the course of the season. No, come on, let's be honest. Tom Thibodeau is not going to do that. But it does make those minutes a little bit easier for those guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we talked about it. It was an exceptional situation. The Knicks finished the season with 5 of their 6 highest paid players injured on the bench, the 6th one gutting through an injury he had no business gutting through. Like, even if they hadn't made a deal, I honestly would have been okay with their depth. The only concern was that a lot of those guys were injury prone. And at a certain point, like you almost have to, you absolutely have to take that into account. And I think this trade is taking that into account, is some insurance. But look, they're going to have to be fully healthy to beat the Boston Celtics, unless the Celtics have equally or more severe injuries. As far as the rest of the East, though, they have even more wiggle room than they had last year. And I think even last year they had a ton of wiggle room where if just the Nova 3 were healthy, forget about Bojan, Mitch, and Julius Randle and everyone else that was hurt, they probably get to the conference finals anyways. So I think they're in a really great position going forward. Harden, DiVincenzo coming off the bench in a theoretical series against the Celtics would be an X factor, because as much as Boston's starting five is unmatched in the league, having two guys like that off the bench is a luxury I don't really think any team in the NBA can boast.
I should have mentioned Bojan Bogdanovic is also going out in this trade for salary purposes. And he was really not expected to be back with New York anyway, whether he was going to be a trade piece or whatever it was. Quickly here, let's talk about what it cost, because for unprotected picks and out into the future, that certainly carries plenty of risk. But if it means you can be a title contender this year, it seems like it's the kind of move that we just saw the Bucks do this with Drew Holiday. Maybe it's risky. Maybe it's an overpay. I'm not even sure if that's true. But if you think it makes you a title contender, don't you have to do it?
Yeah, the way I phrased it on Twitter is an overpay in a vacuum. I would say not an overpay in the context that I think it, again, puts the Knicks maybe second in terms of title favorites in the NBA. Oklahoma City, Denver, they'll have something to say about that. Milwaukee, Philly, they'll have something to say about that. But right now, that's where I would have them. And you just look, you have a top 5 to 10 player in the league in his prime in Jalen Brunson. You have to go all in on that. This was the Knicks' window to go all in on that with all the different extensions they have coming up. And they took advantage of it. So I just don't think there's any question that this was a worthy move, especially when you consider that they still have 2 outstanding first round picks owed from the Pistons, from the Wizards. Those are heavily protected. It's possible they don't convert, but they have some stuff to play with. They have 4 of their own picks to play with. Only one of those is a swap with the Nets. So they still have control of those picks. They have guys like Deuce McBride. They have 2 first round picks in this year's draft that maybe they take now. So there are still avenues for the Knicks to add young, cheap talent. I think the reason this isn't an overpay is because of the ceiling of the team, and also because Leon Rose had them in such a great position coming into this trade to survive it and still have a lot to work with going forward.
One more note on this trade. It wasn't the only move the Nets made last night. They also traded the 2026 first round pick they got from the Rockets back to the Rockets for a 2027 Suns first round pick. Houston also got the 2029 Dallas or Phoenix first, whichever is better, and the rights to swap picks with the Suns in 2025. There will be a test later. Are you taking notes? According to Adrian Wojnarowski, the point of all of these picks has been aimed at a major move, potentially returning all those Phoenix picks to the Suns for Kevin Durant. Stay up to date all year on the New York Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Knicks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, of course. Locked On Nets, Locked On Suns, Locked On Rockets. They're also all there for you. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Cavs have a new man in charge. Before we get to that, the Jaguars' home field is going to get a facelift. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. I mean, keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Right now, 5 teams have odds better than 10-1 to win the World Series. According to FanDuel, the LA Dodgers are the favorites, plus 320. Right behind them, the Yankees and Phillies, each with odds at plus 450. I have that Phillies ticket. I think it's 16-1, maybe longer. But there's the Braves, 9-1, and the Orioles at plus 950. And the Guardians, who currently look like a really, really good team, at 22-1. Hold on. Can I just do that right now? Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. The Jacksonville City Council voted 14-1 Tuesday night to approve an agreement between the Jaguars and the city on a $1.4 billion renovation of Everbank Stadium. Now, they just need 24 of the 32 owners to approve the agreement. If that happens, construction is scheduled to begin after the team's 2025 season concludes and will finish in time for the 2028 season. At the end of the project, the city will have paid 55%, but Jags owner Shad Khan will be responsible for cost overruns of the renovation as well as 80.4% of the game day expenses. This is a big step toward the Jaguars staying put in Jacksonville for a very long time. We told you about the Knicks' big swing and complicating their future. OG Anunoby has opted out of his contract with the New York Knicks and will become a free agent. Anunoby was due to make $19 million next season, but expectations are he'll get closer to $35 million on the open market. Anunoby was the headliner in a trade that saw the Knicks send RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley to the Toronto Raptors. Anunoby turns 27 next month. On the diamond, the Tigers shut down the red-hot bats of the Phils.
We've got a fun baseball team to watch. What a win for the Tigers, and Tarek Skubal does it again. He is back, folks. 7 innings of shutout baseball as the Tigers even the series against the Phillies. 4-1 the final in this one. We're going to break it all down. The offense showed up for 1 inning, and we've been doing the fun, last number of games with this Tigers offense, 0 runs, 1 run, and then double digits. They scored 4 runs tonight. They're back to being a normal baseball team. No, I won't go that far. This team nobody's going to figure out this team. I think that's going to be the takeaway.
And the Astros took care of business against the Rockies as they continued their climb back into the playoff race.
I'm always positive, always Astros. I'm positive whether you fell asleep watching this game, whether you were doing something while watching this game, that if you just watched the first inning, you were like, this game is going to be 20-0 Astros. And they did win 5-2, but it's not how you win, it's if you win. And I thought the way they won wasn't terrible either, because you clearly put up a crooked number and you were able to defend it. And the number of runs that they've scored in the first inning are almost equal to the numbers of runs that have been scored on them in the first inning, where at one point it was like a 3-1 ratio. So I'm okay with today.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are hoping to put together another Eastern Conference playoff run this season, and to do it, J.B. Bickerstaff out. Kenny Atkinson, the former Golden State Warriors assistant, former New Jersey Nets head coach, he is in. Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs, our new Locked On Cavs host, joins me now. And Danny, this is a move that I think makes a lot of sense to Cavs fans. What was your reaction to it?
So, and thank you for having me. My initial reaction was that the Cavs are going to take a step forward offensively with this move, and that's the most important thing for them. This is a team that's got a lot of talent. Donovan Mitchell, I expect to sign a contract extension to stay in Cleveland long term. I expect the rest of the core 4, maybe they all won't be back. Darius Garland could be on the move. Jarrett Allen maybe could be on the move. I expect Evan Mobley to improve. But I think that the Cavaliers are a very talented basketball team that needed a more creative mind offensively. They needed a spark on that end of the floor. And ultimately, that's what I believe Kenny Atkinson has been hired to bring to the table for the Cavs.
It also, based on the reporting that we have right now, it seems like it may have, at least for the moment, been a salve on some of the personnel questions that the team had moving forward. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell being the primary questions about, okay, is this a backcourt that wants to play together, that can play together? What is your what is your side on how this can work moving forward? And does hiring someone like Kenny Atkinson, who has a history of saying, we'll just figure this stuff out, and actually doing it, change the way that you view the future of this backcourt?
So I do believe that those two can coexist in the backcourt. I absolutely think that is a possibility, and I don't think you have to really look any further than their first year together. Donovan Mitchell's first year in Cleveland. Darius Garland was coming off of an all-star season the year before. I thought Donovan Mitchell played some of the best basketball of his career during that season. I thought Darius Garland was just as good as he was during his all-star campaign. He just didn't quite have the same volume of numbers to get himself to a second all-star appearance. And then I honestly believe that you can throw out the past season for Darius Garland. Everything that he went through, from a fractured jaw to losing a ton of weight, he never really could catch a rhythm. I don't think that is worth looking at when you're evaluating not only him, but whether or not that Garland and Mitchell can coexist in the backcourt together for the Cavs. That said, I don't know if that's going to be the direction that all parties want to go in. There's been some reporting by The Athletic that Darius Garland's agent, Rich Paul, could have a conversation with the Cavs about maybe finding a new home for Darius Garland if and when Donovan Mitchell signs a contract extension. That said, Darius still has 4 years left on his deal. There is no player option at the end of it. So it's not as if he is in a position of high leverage right now to force his way out. But I do think that even if without Kenny Atkinson, I was a believer those two could fit together in the backcourt. But adding an offensive mind that I believe in very much in Kenny Atkinson only ups that belief that those two can be successful together.
So this was a team that did come up short in the postseason, though they did win a round in the Eastern Conference this year. What do they need to do roster-wise to get to that next level, to be truly in the conversation with some of the Eastern Conference contenders? You know, maybe not get to Boston's level without some big changes, but get in that Philadelphia Bucks next tier conversation.
Right, and I don't believe there's a team in the Eastern Conference right now that can necessarily get to Boston's level. I think the Cavs, as you said, are fighting to be near the top of that second tier. I think roster-wise, they need more additions on the wing. If that means that you upgrade there because you traded maybe Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland, then so be it. But I think that those are necessary upgrades to make on the wing. The other, I think, thing that is going to be a big determining factor on just how good the Cavs are is going to be the internal development and growth of Evan Mobley. How good Mobley is going to be something that tells you what the ceiling is for the Cavs. When they traded for Donovan Mitchell a couple of years ago, that was a move that I think significantly raised their floor. They're always going to be a very good team as long as Donovan Mitchell is on the floor, healthy, and playing great basketball. But for them to be a great team, they need Evan Mobley to become someone that is at the very least an all-star, if not more. He's capable of it. What the Cavs and Kenny Atkinson can get out of him this year and in the years to come is ultimately what I think is going to determine just how good this roster and this era of Cavaliers basketball can be.
Stay up to date all year on the Cleveland Cavaliers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Cavaliers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, we give you some names to watch in the NBA draft. This draft has a decidedly international feel. Could the first name off the board be a player from overseas? Alex Sarr could be that guy.
Alex Sarr is a 7'1" modern NBA big hailing from France. Many people believe Sarr's athleticism combined with his offensive potential position him to be a top 2 pick in this year's draft. I am James Barlow from the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Alex Sarr has the potential to play either the power forward or the center position. The 19-year-old last played for the Perth Wildcats of the NBL in Australia, where he averaged 9.6 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game in just 18 minutes per contest. Prior to the NBL, he helped France win the bronze of the 2022 FIBA Under-17 World Cup and then silver at the 2023 FIBA Under-19 World Cup. His current NBA player comp is Evan Mobley. Alex Sarr is expected to have an immediate impact on an NBA roster. For more on Alex Sarr and all things NBA related, follow and subscribe to the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
But Sarr's not the only one. There's French player Zachary Ruche, who could be the difference maker on the wing.
This is Richard Saman from the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, talking about Zachary Ruche, the wing from France. He is a very interesting prospect at 6'8", only a 6'9.5" wingspan. No, it's actually pretty big, but for a wing, you want to have somebody with a lot longer than their body of a wingspan, generally 7 foot plus, approaching that. Not quite there. It's kind of a red flag for him, but his dad played basketball in Spain, so he comes from a basketball family. He's a really good shooter and he's a very good defender. Everything else kind of in between is a little bit tough to come across. Reminds you a little bit of how he's at the top of the draft, the way Jabari Smith was at the top of the draft just 2 years ago compared to some creators and some bigs. You know, the same way that Jabari Smith was at the top. He's not a bad comp. A little bit of different players, but that 3-and-D mold with some area to fill in is going to intrigue some teams at the top. And because of that, Ruche is actually one of the safer players. And if you're looking for a player that can be 3-and-D right away, start, but not really grow too much into star mold, Zachary Ruche is your guy.
And could Reed Shepard actually be the best player in this draft?
Reed Shepard from the Kentucky Wildcats can do just about a little bit of everything for whichever NBA team ends up drafting him. Hi, my name is Lance Stahl, host of the Locked On Kentucky podcast, and Reed Shepard was crazy efficient coming off the bench at guard for the Wildcats a season ago, averaging 12.5 points, 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals, 4 rebounds, all while shooting 52% from 3. I like to think of him similarly to a current Kentucky Wildcat in the NBA, and that's Cason Wallace with the Oklahoma City Thunder. 3-and-D, I think, is what Reed Shepard could provide at combo guard. You could bring him off the bench, you could start him, and if you want to give him volume, if you want to give him a ton of outside shots, I like Klay Thompson as a spicy comparison because both of these guys physically very, very similar stuff coming out of the NBA draft. For more on Reed Shepard and the Kentucky Wildcats, subscribe to Locked On Kentucky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
And how can we not mention a UConn player? We might have 2 go in the top 3 to 5 picks. Donovan Kingan will instantly upgrade a team's front court, or at least that's the goal.
Donovan Kingan, Kling Kong from the 2-time defending champs UConn Huskies, the most impactful player in college basketball. Hi, I'm Mark Zanetto from Locked On UConn. At 7'2", 280 pounds, Donovan is an imposing figure on the defensive end with surprising touch and footwork on the offensive end. His basketball acumen is underrated and will develop as a plus 3-point shooter at the NBA level. I'd put Donovan as a comparable to a potentially tougher version of a Rudy Gobert with the passing and shooting ability of a Domantas Sabonis. Kingan will 100% have an immediate impact from whoever drafts him in the NBA. For more on Donovan Kingan, all things UConn, follow and subscribe to Locked On UConn on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Stay up to date all year on the NBA draft by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NBA Big Board on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And finally, immediately after falling in the College World Series to Tennessee on Monday, Texas A&M head coach Jim Schlagel said he would never leave. Tuesday, he left for Texas. Schlagel said, after the loss, I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. And then yet another college coach who said they'd never leave their job only to absolutely jump at the next big offer that came their way. It's almost like you shouldn't say you never leave. It's okay. We know you might leave. I'm just saying. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here with you for the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, the Dodgers and Phillies pace the muddled National League. Will anyone contend with them this season? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.